Hi, I'm David Marchant, the founder of OffshoreAlert, which investigates participants in high-value cross-border finance with an emphasis on high-confidentiality jurisdictions. Our specialty is exposing investment fraud while it's in progress. Enjoy our content.
Yeah, hi. Welcome to our panel on the biggest tax heist ever. A license to print money is the title. And that's indeed the case. Maybe first a word to my person. I'm Christian Salewski, a German investigative reporter with ARD current affairs show Panorama. And together with me today presenting is my colleague Oliver Schröm. Olli, maybe you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, my name is Oliver Schröm. I'm the former chief editor of Correctiv, a German non-profit newsroom. Now I'm working for Panorama, the oldest investigative news show in German public TV.
Yes, and today we were kindly invited to present on an investigation we are doing now for over 4 years, I guess. We started out in 2016 looking into the so-called CumEx trade, which back then was an alleged fraud, which today is being ruled as a fraud already in German courts. And we want to show you a bit about what we did and how this developed over the years. Maybe as a beginning, we just play a little trailer, you know, to get it to start off a little casual, and our trailer for our big international corporation, which comes up now. That's it.
Denmark was hit very heavily. It has cost the Danish taxpayers almost 2 billion euros in total.
We estimate that France was hit up to 3 billion euros a year by this kind of trade since the 90s.
It was a trade which initially was discovered purely by chance, and yet a group of masterminds turned it into an industrialized cottage industry from Dubai to London, New York to Dublin, taking billions of euros out of the pockets of European taxpayers.
We found out that Netherlands has also been hit by CumEx trades, and the estimation is that we've been hit for hundreds of millions of euros.
So, as you have seen, this was a big corporation. Altogether, we were 40 journalists from 19 different European countries. And maybe to give you a heads up on what we will discuss today with you, we have some different topics, but some highlights up front. So this man you see here is one of the most crucial whistleblowers, key witnesses in German prosecution against the CumEx trade. He does look differently, but to that we come later. And he was the one who broke the silence, not only and cooperated not only with the prosecution, but also spoke to us in exclusive interviews which lasted several days. And we will talk about him and another insider also. This is, as you see, Oliver and me. We are here in disguise. We are undercover in this picture in a very fancy suite in a London skyscraper, the Shard, the big hotel there. And we are here trying, as a means of last resort, we are trying to prove that the CumEx trade is still ongoing, even as of today. We will talk about that. And we will talk a bit about the political outcome of our investigation, the impact side. This is the European Parliament, which not only held hearings on our findings, but also filed the first petition ever to do a deep dive investigation into the stability of the European financial markets, all related to our revelations. So this is what we are going to do today. And Oliver starts from here.
Yeah, it all started with a phone call from a whistleblower. In 2013, a person from Switzerland called me and told me something about CumEx. I never heard this name CumEx, and I didn't understand, or I understand nothing. So it was terrible. But after some moments, he mentioned a German self-made millionaire. His name is Carsten Maschmeyer, and then I said, okay, perhaps that's a story, because Carsten Maschmeyer is our German Donald Trump. I hope not our next president, but he's really an edgy business guy, and I smelt the story, and I think perhaps it's a tax fraud story about German prominent business guys. And so that's the guy, Mr. Carsten Maschmeyer. That was a title story in Stern magazine, it's German weekly, in spring 2014. And the story, after we published the story, we had a big impact, also for me personally. Private bank in Switzerland hired private eyes to get more information about me. The state attorney in Zurich started an investigation against me for industrial espionage. And to be on the safe side, I didn't travel to Switzerland for years. And 2018, the prosecutor in Switzerland sent a case to Hamburg, and the public prosecutor took over the case and started investigation on basis of business secrets against me. So now it's up to you. Okay, there's some invoice from the private eyes. Perhaps some of you know these companies. Perhaps someone of these companies is watching now. So let's come together after this show. We can talk a little bit about what happened 7 years ago. It was, now I'm laughing and it was funny, but during this time it was really hard for me. Okay.
This is me sitting in my office in NDR, and Oliver in 2016 entering my room there. He was new to Panorama, and what he brought was this stick, and on it was massive loads of data, files, prosecution files, all top secret. And it was all a big myth for us in the beginning. And we then set out with this data to dive into the world of CumEx, and it took us quite some time to really understand what actually was going on, because the trade itself is quite complex if you're not a professional stock trader, which we aren't or weren't. Maybe today we could try it. I don't know. Yes, so what you see here is this very complex scheme. If we can move to the next slide. How long is this video actually? Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to show you. So maybe a little excursus on what we are talking about actually. So we are talking about a trading pattern which is called dividend arbitrage. Dividend arbitrage is actually a license to print money. What happens here is you do stock transactions on a massive scale. We talk about billions of worth of stocks being traded on very short time around the div-X date of a company. So what you do is you move a stock circular around with no market risk at all, because everything is hedged. And the only goal by doing so is to achieve a tax refund on the dividend tax. You do that, there are different versions of that, and you can do it in different levels of aggressiveness. The market-wide phenomenon, which is around in most countries on Earth, or have been around, and which was used heavily, is the so-called cum trade, which is a single dip. That is why there is the one time. So how does that work? Imagine you're a large stockholder, pension fund or whatever of German blue chips, and you're sitting in the US on large amounts of German blue chips. You then, right before the DivX date, enter into agreement to loan these stocks basically over to Germany over the DivX date. A German institutional investor, a bank, for example, would then be entitled to reclaim the tax deduction. And 1 day later, the stock package goes back and you share the saved tax. The tax refund is shared between both parties. So what happens from the perspective of the taxpayer is a tax which should be coming into the state coffers isn't coming, it's paid out again. So this is a single dip. The state gets poorer by that. That has been considered widely legal if aggressive, but it's a market-wide phenomenon, as I already said. One level above that is what you see here is the CumEx trade. The CumEx trade is much more aggressive because it takes a double dip. So you not only reclaim a tax to which you are not entitled, but you do that. You double the effort. So you take it out twice basically, and then share the profit amongst all participants in the trade. And you can do that by inserting a short sale into that classical cum transaction. If you do a short sale over the DivX date of a stock, you then on paper it appears for the tax authorities as if one stock has multiple owners at that moment, and they cannot differentiate between who is entitled to a tax refund, and they pay out twice. So this basic principle CumEx is the one we were looking at, or we are looking at here, because that was used heavily by industry-wide, heavily by most investment banks. It was refined. It was considered a loophole. It was then tried to stop the loophole. The banks invented all other new ways of tricking, of doing that trick basically. And yeah, that's where we enter the area of pure tax fraud. So above that, there are even more aggressive versions, which then over time evaluated out of that as a kind of evolution. The looping basically is, as I described, you can do that circular trading intraday wide. Even more often than 2 times. You can just do it 10 times, for example. That is what has been seen in the market, 10 times the same stock, which means 10 tax reclaims on one stock, which of course is you take out 9 taxes which were never paid. And the most aggressive version, which was encountered in the market by, for example, the I think infamous in between investment banker Sanjay Shah, for example, who owned the banks in the end, and so by controlled the entire CumEx universe, so to speak. He was left hand and right hand, and he allegedly once claimed that he just prints out his own tax vouchers. So it's basically you can grab into the state coffers as long as you have printer paper, so to say. This, of course, is pure fraud and is also being under investigation right now. So maybe that for this. That's what I just said. The basic principle of the CumEx trade, the simple CumEx trade, is to create a situation in which a share appears to have multiple owners, and the dividend gains tax, the capital gains tax, which is actually paid only once to the state, is certified multiple times and can also be reclaimed multiple times, which is, of course, pure theft. So much for there. Oli, warst du da?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in 2018, we managed a real scoop. Insider was ready to tell us his story in front of the camera. And he's also the key witness of the German Public Prosecutor Office. However, we had to change his face. And okay. He gave us a lot of inside information in front of the camera, but I want to show you a longer sequence of the interview when he opened up and spoke about the psychological mindset of the traders. It is in German with English subtitle. We manipulated his voice technically, but it was necessary. Okay.
Ja, ich könnte vielleicht so anfangen, dass ich wirklich aus der Provinz stamme, aus ganz einfachen, bodenständigen, normalen Verhältnissen. Ich bin in meinen ersten 18 Lebensjahren fernab von irgendwelchen Hochhäusern der Frankfurter Bankenszene oder der Londoner City aufgewachsen. Da, wo ich aufgewachsen bin, da wird man entweder Arbeiter, Landwirt oder Arbeitsloser. So hieß es bei uns in der Familie. Ich wollte mich mit diesem Schicksal nicht abfinden und, wie ich heute weiß, war von einem übersteigerten Ehrgeiz getrieben, unbedingt Karriere zu machen, dort rauszukommen, in die große, weite Welt zu gehen, von der ich eigentlich keine Ahnung hatte. Kannte ich nur aus dem Fernsehen. Und mit diesem Ehrgeiz habe ich dann Jura studiert, auch schon mit Einschlag in das Wirtschaftsrechtliche. Und ich hatte dann das Glück, einen sehr guten Abschluss zu machen und habe dann Menschen kennengelernt, Professoren, andere Anwälte, die auf mich aufmerksam wurden, die mir sehr schnell eine Turbo-Karriere ermöglichten. Also diese Abschlussnoten, die ich da gemacht habe, eröffneten mir eine Welt, von der ich gar nicht wusste, dass es sie gibt. CumEx hat mich korrumpiert. CumEx hat mich vergiftet. Ab 2006, als wir die ersten CumEx-Transaktionen getätigt haben, bis zum Ende des Exzesses 2011, habe ich die rote Linie überschritten. Ich habe mich durch die Mixtur von Geld, Gier und übersteigertem Selbstwertgefühl, beziehungsweise wir haben uns einfach als die Genies gesehen. Man könnte ganz einfach sagen, in diesem Elfenbeinturm, in dem wir gearbeitet haben, stellen Sie sich einfach ein 38 Stockwerk hohes Haus in Frankfurt, in der Finanzmetropole Frankfurt vor und stellen Sie sich vor, da arbeiten auf einem Flur 30, 40 Personen, die alle meinen, das Rad neu erfunden zu haben in ihrem Bereich. Steuerrecht, Bankrecht, Kapitalanlagerecht. Und genau so haben wir uns gefühlt, da oben. Wenn Sie dann runtergeguckt haben auf die Straße, auf die Taunusanlage, dann haben Sie nur noch ganz kleine Menschen gesehen. Und das war die Welt, die normale Welt. Zu der gehörten wir nicht mehr. Wir waren da ganz oben. Ich bin mit einem Einstiegsgehalt von damals 90.000 D-Mark waren das, glaube ich sogar, habe ich begonnen. 3 Jahre später habe ich schon 500.000 Euro verdient. Und ich denke, es war 2005, als ich das erste Mal 1 Million Euro verdient hatte. Jetzt könnte man denken, das reicht doch. Aber aus der heutigen Perspektive kann ich eins sagen, es war nie genug. Nie. Es kamen viele, viele, viele Millionen nach in den Jahren danach, die ich übrigens alle wieder abliefern musste. Aber das ist wichtig zu verstehen. Selbst wenn Sie nachher so viel Geld auf dem Konto haben, dass Sie das in Ihrem ganzen Leben nicht mehr ausgeben können. Und das war auch noch zu einem Zeitpunkt, als CumEx nicht inkriminiert war. Das heißt, es hätte einen Zeitpunkt gegeben, wenn wir damals ausgestiegen wären, wäre das zu all dem gar nicht gekommen, worüber wir heute sprechen. Aber es ging nicht mehr um Zahlen. Es ging nicht mehr um die nächste Million. Es ging um den Thrill. Die Herausforderung, das ist Ihr zweiter Punkt, die Herausforderung, immer schlauer zu sein als alle anderen. Ich kann das vielleicht wirklich in diesen ganz platten Satz pressen. Wir haben da oben in diesem 32. Stock aus dem Fenster geguckt und haben gedacht, wir sind die Schlausten, wir sind die Genies und ihr seid alle doof.
Wenn von
CumEx-Deals.
Yes, so what you see, this exclusive interview and our investigative research, besides that, led to big news all over Germany. We investigated the biggest, we published about the biggest tax fraud in German history, and it made, of course, landslide news all over the place. And when we were finished with that investigation, and then we got more data. Another, let's say, stick came flying, and we had to deep dive again, because we had new information, especially on this man here. And this man is Hanno Berger. He is considered to be the mastermind behind CumEx, the man who found the formula, so to say, and elaborated on that ever more. And he now lives in Switzerland. He fled the German justice system already in 2012, when the door in his office was kicked in. He just went off to Switzerland and is now awaiting trial in Germany, and it's dubious if he will ever show up. But that man, who is the architect behind the CumEx trade, so to speak, we had from that moment on, we had also his parts of his conversation from the time of the fraud itself, and we stumbled upon this one email which shows that really as early as 2007, it wasn't only Germany which was in the focus of these guys and of the big banks. It was all over the place. This is an email in which is discussed which other countries can be looted with the same stunt. And as you see, maybe on top, maybe it's a little small, there is discussed Belgium, Switzerland, Netherlands, Finland, Denmark, Norway, Hungary, Czech Republic, Poland, Malta, Sweden, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Austria, United Kingdom, France, Ireland, and Luxembourg. So basically the whole of Europe. And that is when we thought, we cannot do this alone. We have to get colleagues on board from the other European countries, and that's what we did. That's what you saw in the beginning of our presentation, that we teamed up with 40 colleagues from 19 different countries, and investigated and published after I think close to a year of investigating that stuff, this big CumEx files investigation in all these media. Das muss ich selber mal gucken. Ja. What I just said. Here's part of the group sitting together in Corrective's office in Berlin. Corrective is an independent non-profit news organization doing investigative news, maybe comparable to ProPublica, if some of you know that better, from New York. And Corrective was in charge of coordinating this effort. And that is part of the work routine there. We met several times. We discussed all this stuff on secure channels, of course. We had an encrypted database set up, and so on, like what you always also have heard from the Panama Papers and stuff like that, maybe. So we kind of did the same. What we found in the end is this number, which is now the number which is kind of the price tag to that fraud, and it's a minimum number. It's a very conservative estimate of 55.2 billion euros stolen from European taxpayers over the years, and it's just a massive amount. It's an amount you cannot really grasp initially, and it's really a conservative number. We have also published the methodology behind the calculation. It's partly official from official records, partly it's academic research but it's really conservative. So it's very well possible that it's much more. The numbers of the individuals prosecuted here is missing a zero in between. It's been widened ever since the investigations. The criminal charges are brought in Germany against around 1,000 individuals in between. And in other countries, there are also investigations going on. So after we did that, this is, of course, the wonderful skyline of London, the Shard. We thought, let's go one step further, maybe, and look not only at the let's say victim side, but also on the perpetrator side a little deeper. And as most of that fraud was orchestrated out of London, or the city of London, of course, where the big banks are, we did go to London and look there for people who could help us understand that a bit more. And we were lucky to find another whistleblower, another insider who spoke very openly with us. We teamed up with the New York Times for that specific part of our investigation. And what we want to show you is just a some-minute clip of how we talked to another anonymous source, a high-ranking man who was a first-hand witness inside the U.S. investment bank Merrill Lynch, today Bank of America. And it's really interesting what he has to say.
This man, we call him John Baker, was a top banker at the investment bank Merrill Lynch, today a division of Bank of America. The bank allegedly robbed taxpayers' money all over the world using so-called tax trades, such as CumEx.
I had a role working for Merrill Lynch, which is now Bank of America, on the share trading floor. I worked closely with different businesses that carried out these transactions, as CumEx, which are, as you know, a series of strategies designed to exploit tax differences around the world. It was not about reducing the amount of tax that you pay. It was about taking advantage of a credit to which you were not entitled.
There was practically no risk, just profit, coming straight from the state treasury. This type of business is called dividend arbitrage. For years, CumEx has been the most successful model.
I would describe CumEx as a species of transaction that created free money for the bank. It's the taxpayer paying.
Never before did Baker publicly share what he experienced at the bank. And his interview with us comes at a delicate time for Merrill Lynch. The first criminal case against CumEx bankers is currently tried in Germany. In court, one name pops up again and again: Merrill Lynch. Many stand to lose a lot. Therefore, Baker doesn't want to be recognized.
I fear retaliation by the banks, and I fear the physical retaliation of some of the people involved in these transactions. Some of them are not very nice people. Not all of the people involved in CumEx and dividend arbitrage are from the refined intellectual class. In fact, a lot of the work is very basic. At a bank, you can start in the post room or you can start in the back office performing very simple functions and find that 5 years later, you're being paid $2 million a year to help coordinate CumEx trades.
Tax trading seems to be a complex business, and it is. But Baker knows, once you got the trick, it's actually not very hard work anymore.
In order to make 14 million euros on a transaction, you might only need to do 1 or 2 of them a day. And so a good deal of their day is spent looking, shopping for cars, selling the old car, buying the new one. I mean, there might be a 15-page document that says 7 a.m. before the market opens, we do this. We do that, we do this, we do that. And so it's a cookbook because it goes through all the different ingredients, including the timings that are required through the day or through multiple days in order to ensure that the result that the bank is looking for, the free money in the case of CumEx, comes out the other side.
The US banks carried out these tax trades globally, in various countries. In fact, the US itself was a large market. Until 2008, when a Senate investigation concludes with a public hearing.
Now, it's that same exhibit.
Senator Carl Levin exposes how US banks are looting the US Treasury using dividend arbitrage.
What I oppose is the misuse of financial transactions to undermine the tax code, rob the U.S. Treasury, and force honest Americans to shoulder the country's tax burden.
In a 1,000-page report, Senator Levin's findings on dividend tax abuse are published. The tax trade is unmasked in every detail. Now publicly exposed, the tax trick is no longer possible. This comes as a shock to the banks.
And so fear and paralysis. The other thing is that, you know, some important people at the banks were named in those Senate investigations. And so having your name attached to an investigation, if you're working at a bank, is not the place you want to be. And those people after Levin were no longer able to carry out those transactions, the dividend arbitrage transactions in the United States. So at Merrill Lynch, for example, there was a whole process of people running the business from the United States and moving to Europe to run the business from Europe, to take advantage of the fact that this type of transaction was still available in Europe.
With the attack on US taxpayers exposed, the US market suddenly gets too hot. Specialized teams of tax traders inside the banks are now feverishly looking for alternatives in other countries.
When you come to the desks that are occupied by the tax traders, what you tend to see is rows and rows of not of monitors, but of books on international tax treaties. It's more like walking into a library. Actually, the group that I refer to as the more academic side of the business is a group that looks for any gap, any opportunity, any defect that they can exploit.
Merrill Lynch did not answer our questions. But the bankers apparently found what they were looking for. Internal Merrill Lynch documents show how Europe is now in the crosshairs. A presentation titled A Globally Coordinated Approach lists 13 European target countries for tax trades. Particularly large and profitable, Germany.
The reason Germany is of interest is simply that it's one of the largest markets for shares. So they don't care about Germany. They'll go wherever they want or need to go to find the fattest transactions that they can get their hands on.
The US publicly cracked down on tax trades in 2008 already. Germany could take this as a warning. Instead, the CumEx scandal in Germany just now enters the hot phase. Baker notices how the European tax trading business becomes ever more ruthless. He's afraid of getting implicated with criminal conduct, so he tries to do something. Together with colleagues, he files an anonymous whistleblower complaint with the US Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. They lay out in detail how the tax trading business and especially CumEx work. Is this the end of the global attack on taxpayers?
They didn't seem to be interested in this. They did not see this as a global problem, orchestrated and governed and managed out of New York. They saw it as a German problem and didn't understand why they would be interested in one of their banks committing frauds overseas.
The German Federal Ministry of Finance wasn't informed about the complaint. But the German authorities could have stopped the tax trades earlier if only they had recognized the 1,000-page Senate report. When asked, the ministry left this specific question open. Instead, it took Germany years to finally stop CumEx.
It's obvious that system is broken. The banks are operated in microseconds. The authorities are operating in decades.
Yeah, let me start with the next chapter of our investigation. We knew that Germany was robbed. We knew also that Europe was robbed. But one of the biggest questions was, it is a historical story or still going on with CumEx and similar trades. The German government called a stop to the practice in 2012 by law. But a source told us about a recent market offer from a trader in London. Christian and I realized that may be a good idea to start an undercover operation. So we came back to London and we pretended to be brothers and billionaires. Half brothers, I know, it sounds crazy, it was crazy, but it was successful. Former asset manager trained about the behavior of the world of the super rich. and we had an offshore company, and it has been registered for over 10 years and belongs to a long-time sources who agreed to its use. So.
Okay. Got it. Yes, that would be me then. Yes, as Oliver mentioned, we were going undercover to answer the question, which was we had no other means to do so. If the hint that the CumEx trade, which allegedly was being closed down in Germany and in other European countries, is still working, or versions of it at least, iterations of it. And we did so by going undercover as steel tycoons, German billionaires. And the story was wild, but it wasn't wild enough to that our opponent didn't fall for that. What we did, we said we want to invest 200 million euros in tax arbitrage strategies, and as Oliver explained, with some help, we managed to find this man who then came to our suite. Oh, is that the video with the suite? Yeah. So this was a moment of truth for us. We set up the suite with hidden cameras, hidden microphones, which is legal in England for undercover purposes of investigative journalists. And we wanted to meet this guy, who then showed up and gave us an actual market offer for div-arb trades in 7 European countries. And promised us to make millions out of different state coffers with basically no risk attached. The only risk is of exposure, of course, but it was a classical div-arb trades set up, which he offered. Yeah, and this man, maybe we can say that much. He is also being prosecuted in between, not because of our findings, but because of their own investigative research of the prosecutor. And he is one descendant, let's say, of the boutique of Sanjay Shah, who is one of the leading CumEx fraudsters, allegedly. Yes. This was the final scoop, which then led us to Brussels, because we showed that the CumEx trade and versions of it are still ongoing, and that's maybe where Oliver can take again.
Yes, after the publication, the EU Parliament invited us to a hearing. Our closing statement was, we did our investigative job, and I said to the members of the European Parliament, now it's up to you. Change the law and install a European tax FBI. And in fact, the European Parliament adopted a resolution. It called on EU financial regulators to investigate CumEx and similar trades. But nothing happened for 2 years. And 3 months ago, in September, Financial Market Authority, ESMA, published its final report. First of all, they confirm our research, share deals like CumEx continue. Otherwise, the 70-page report is a disappointment. The report only shows the point of view of the individual authority in Europe. And in many European countries, they are neither aware of such transaction in stocks nor they consider to be criminal. It's real frustrating, and I think it's a big problem for the EU.
So this is what you see here is the biggest room in the biggest chamber at the Landgericht Bonn. And this is the first criminal case being tried against 2 CumEx bankers in Germany. These guys who are blurred here are 2 British citizens and are stock traders. who worked for their dealings for the bank Hypovereinsbank were charged here, and their dealings for their own investment boutique. These two guys didn't get so the trial is over already. The first had lots of publicity. We were also there. Our insider explained all what he told us, also here as the key witness, and exposed the whole thing, also in court. And so after, I think, half a year, Oliver, correct me, but half a year of trials, these guys were sentenced. And with that sentence, it was the first time ever to have a criminal verdict against CumEx, basically by that ruling that CumEx is illegal. These guys have to pay back all their gains from it, but they're not going to jail. Why? Because they cooperated heavily. They came forward and confirmed basically everything, and they themselves became sort of crown witnesses for the prosecution, and for that they got these mild sentences. And now the Landgericht Bonn is building up dozens of other cases against people who are not so cooperative, and one follow-up case is now being tried against an ex-banker of the private bank Warburg from Hamburg. And this might very well lead to the first prison sentence then, because this man is not cooperative at all. And he claims to be completely, has done only legal stuff there. So that is a bit the situation. We expect dozens of lawsuits coming up. There's one big lawsuit against Hanno Berger pending in Frankfurt also. And this is let's call it the legal fallout of all that is starting just now. And maybe for this audience also interesting is that the civil litigation fallout is also starting out heavily now. Basically everybody is suing everybody over that. As long as they made money together, it all worked fine. They were the biggest partners in crime, basically, and now they are suing each other, and there might be opportunity for you guys. So this was our little presentation about the CumEx files journey we did, and we are happy to take some questions if you want. Thanks.
Some banks in Germany paid back the money, but it... Die muss man vorlesen? Someone is asking if has any money been recovered yet. Yes, one bank in Bavaria paid back the money, but all other banks try to win the case. So it's still exciting what's going on. We lost about 10 billion euro with CumEx, so it's a long way for the state attorney to get back the money.
Okay, here's a question. What measures are being taken if suspects will not show up in court? What civil measures are being taken and by whom? Where the suspects have absconded? Where are they believed to be? Yeah, of course, a lot of people are hiding. There are publicly known cases such as maybe the name Paul Morra is a name which is to be said here. Paul Morra is one big investment banker, one big CumEx guy, and he is a New Zealander, and he moved back to New Zealand, and will not be will not be coming back to Europe sometime soon, I guess. The other case, which maybe is of interest here, is Sanjay Shah, who lives in Dubai, and who is heavily prosecuted by the Danish because he is allegedly behind the big fraud against Denmark. And his assets, I think the Danish are trying to seize assets by civil litigation in New York courts, which is a very for us as Germans, it's a new move that state attorneys also do civil litigation moves against suspects, but the Danish are maybe so desperate that they I don't know, that's just interpretation, but they to our knowledge are doing that. Yes.
Okay, David is asking if any defamation lawsuits. Yes, of course. A lot of banks sued us, and our lawyers have a lot to do. So, but that's the normal business for us. Someone is asking if Sanjay didn't win a victory. I don't think so. He tried to make a deal with the Danish authority and also with the German. He gave an interview to Bloomberg, I think 4 or 5 weeks ago, and he's prepared to go to jail. And he said, "Okay, that's like holidays. Now I have enough time to read books and something like that." He seems a little bit crazy, this guy, but I think he has no chance. I'm pretty sure he's going to jail. I'm not. I can't read this. I don't know if the authority in Dubai make a tradition. I think Sanjay is tired about the situation. He's in like a jail in Dubai, and he think, okay, now it's time to go back to Europe, make a deal, and go to jail for 2 or 3 years, and then it's over. I think that's his plan.
Okay, I would take the next one, which is, do you rely on the help of whistleblowers, or do you turn to professional analytical help to understand the structures used to perpetrate these schemes? We use all the help we can get, I think is the answer. So, of course, the best case is people from the inside, as shown here, help us understand. But of course, we also turn to academics, and yeah, we have to basically study for ourselves the basics of the elaborates of financial markets also. So over these years, it was more or less like a second university diploma or something made. So I think we have a pretty good understanding, but of course, we turn to all the help we can get to understand the stuff.
Until now, sorry, the question, have UK regulators, police taken any action given much happened in the city of London? Until now, I don't think so. I heard that there's a little investigation against 6 people, but the German authority arrested some guys from the UK in Saint-Tropez 3-4 months ago. So it was a sign to the market. You are not sure, not in the UK, not in the United States, not in Saint-Tropez in France or anywhere. So we can and we will arrest you. So it was a really important operation.
Oh, maybe we can answer that. How many different parties are used in a typical CumEx trade? Well, on a very, very, very basic level, you would use 3. But 3, the seller, the short seller, and the buyer, and then you circulate the stuff. But in reality, of course, you have a lot more people working on this machine. You have legal experts who file legal opinions that everything seemingly is legal. Then you have, of course, different banks. You have custodian banks, you have investment banks, you have super rich investors and stuff. So in reality, you have a whole machine with a lot of division of labor is key to this, to understanding this. This is also what the key witness in court and told us in our interview that it's a highly labor divisive thing. Everybody knows what they are working on, but it's so fragmented that everybody can still say, I don't have the full picture and I'm not doing something illegal. At least that's what they told themselves all the time. So it's also a way of protecting yourself, maybe, to claim that you don't know the whole picture. That is why it's so divided into different pieces, the whole structure. But yeah, the basic principle is you need 3 parties, but in reality it's more.
So have any countries changed their regulations because of this? Only Germany and Denmark, and that's the problem. I mentioned in the presentation the report of ESMA, and when you read this 70 pages, it's really a frustration thing, because the most countries in Europe did not recognize the problem. Some countries answered to the ESMA, well, we have no problem, there's no CumEx in our country and something like that. But that's really wrong, because we showed with our undercover operation that it's going on in all parts of Europe. So it's up to the European Parliament now and to the European authority to bring the country to the situation, to change the situation.
Okay, then I will answer this one, try to answer this one. Given the massive size of the fraud and the way in which it required constant reporting to the state, why did it take so long to be discovered? Were regulatory agencies raising concerns and being ignored? Yeah, that's a good question, because we were asking this ourselves, of course, all the time. So this was at least the CumCum version of it, the least aggressive version, was a market-wide phenomenon. It was an open light, and also the CumEx trade wasn't a really top secret thing. And a lot of people have tried to warn German regulators. We can at least say that for Germany, and yes, have been ignored in a way. The authorities didn't want to look too close to that, and they really, until today, you really need also the investigative journalists' effort to really get them on their tracks. And yeah, it's a good question why that took so long. Maybe the stakes were too high for the banks involved. I don't know, but yeah, there's clear evidence of malfunction on the state side here.
Is it still going on? It's easy to answer, yes. But nobody recognized this, or I have no idea what's going on in the other countries in Europe, because it's still going on. They robbed Europe, and nobody changed the law. And I have no answer what we can do. We can show more cases. We can investigate more companies, more banks, but it's always the same game. But they call it now not CumEx. Now they call it event-driven or something like that. They change a little bit the mechanic, but in the result, so it's the money come from the states. That's all.
Let me maybe add to that a bit. Yes, it's still going on, but it's always evolving. It's not the same stunt. Also, the CumEx trade was never the classical CumEx trade that was maybe in the early, maybe 2005. It was a classical CumEx trade. After that, with every try to regulate something, they twisted a little the mechanics of the trade. And they, made it more complicated. They kind of used different futures to trade, not stocks and stuff like that. So they are really elaborate. The academic side of the game, as our one London insider said, is really, up to speed and finding workarounds for every regulation. And this is what's happening now. The classical CumEx trade may be gone in Germany after 2012, but as we have proven, and as we have shown, and as now is also discussed in the Bundestag and stuff, other versions of the same double dip structure, the basic principle is the same, is still around, and also in other European countries. So it might not be CumEx anymore. Let's call it CumBum or whatever you want to name it. It's the basic principle. Yeah, well, then I'm just reading. We'll end here. Thank you for your great session. So I think we have to thank you for listening to us 1 hour, and hopefully stay safe.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to our investigative news and documents service and attending our events. For more information, visit offshorealert.com.